Story 1. Lying, manipulation, harming others, and lacking sympathy are not normal. This is also known as psychopathy. Story 2. They do not take accountability and admit when they are wrong. Story 3. They treat those around them poorly and seem to make all their decisions based on what is best for them at the moment. Story 4. Honestly, if someone always makes things about themselves, lies a lot, or hurts people without feeling bad, that is a big red flag. Story 5. When someone speaks ill of almost everyone behind their back, once might be understandable, but if it is a pattern, they are two-faced and spiteful. Story 6. They are sitting in the park, reading a newspaper with eye holes cut in it. Story 7. I have never met a good person who is a pathological liar. Story 8. You leave interactions feeling like you have to investigate, defend, or repair yourself. I try to believe people are not bad, but they can project bad intentions based on their own feelings. If someone destabilizes the way I feel after I spend time with them, that triggers my intuition. Bad intentions are disruptive and usually come from selfishness and a lack of self-awareness, accountability, or responsibility. Someone who is bad to me is simply bad for me, because good people do not make you question yourself. Story 9. They say mean things and then claim it is just a joke to hide when called out. Story 10. Parents who provide shelter and food, but neglect their children's emotional needs, project their feelings onto the children, use them as therapists, and control them. This includes parents who are unaware they are doing this and those who enable it. Story 11. They love talking about themselves and all of their accomplishments. Story 12. I would say one clear sign is when someone never takes responsibility for their actions. Everything is always someone else's fault. Story 13. When someone claims to be a good person, as in I am a good Christian man and you can trust me. Avoid these kinds of fakes. Story 14. I'm going to be blunt. Cheating after the age of 25, especially in long-term relationships and marriage, is unacceptable. You might get a pass if you were naive in high school. I briefly dated a woman a while back. She told me she had cheated on her ex-husband. I stopped talking to her. She proved to be a terrible person. To me, that is a clear sign of immorality. If you want to cheat on someone, leave the relationship. Story 15. Whatever the subject, they make it about themselves. Those people are the worst. Story 16. Inability to ask follow-up questions, not from shyness but from indifference and a lack of even pretending to care. Story 17. They cannot admit when they are wrong or have been wrong. Story 18. They treat members of the service industry poorly or dismissively. Occasionally this comes from never having worked in those jobs, but most of the time it stems from a lack of ability or willingness to see other people as equals. I may be biased. I have spent the majority of my working career in the service industry, but I have not met anyone who was awful to service staff and did not carry the same attitude into their personal life. Story 19. I bought a new car and my ex-partner immediately showed disapproval and said this was going to change the dynamic of our relationship because I had a better car than he did. He did not congratulate me or share my happiness. People who are not genuinely happy for others often secretly want to be better than everyone else and have a hard time seeing others thrive. Story 20. They speak ill of people behind their backs and act friendly toward them. Now, it is a huge red flag to me. Story 21. They get jealous when they are your friends or family. They are manipulative and do not want you to be better than them. Story 22. Cruelty exists in all its forms. Know that the worst, the truly cruel, are careful to avoid showing it in public. Story 23. They are always the victim in every story they tell about their acquaintances. Story 24. They drum their fingers together while chuckling. Story 25. My wife became narcissistic because of abuse she suffered as a child. She left me last week after 3 years. I do not think there are bad people. People are the result of all their experiences. Those with more trauma have either healed or not healed, but do not make it your responsibility to heal them. I tell myself, not my monkeys, not my circus. She could never take accountability for anything. I understand why. She was beaten with extension cords and broom handles so severely. that she developed a protective ego that never admitted wrongdoing. Cannot hate her for that. Although she might seem like a bad person, she is not. She needs to become aware of her own facade and ego, and only then will she see the chaos she causes. I still love her and always will. I pray and meditate for her healing. And I am sorry my unconditional love was not enough. Love is the best. I am not jaded. Now I know I can offer unconditional love combined with wisdom. Onward and upward. Story 26. A lack of empathy or the ability to put oneself in someone else's shoes. I am not asking you to check your privilege, but you should recognize it. One of my all-time favorite quotes is, "I was on food stamps and welfare. Did anyone help me? No." The context was about the government helping people, and declaring bankruptcy is another form of government help. You cannot recognize the help you received, or the employees and services that helped you get to where you are. Story 27. When someone understands empathy but does not feel it, also known as a narcissist. Story 28. Nobody who has known them for more than a few years hangs around with them anymore. A common trait of psychopaths is that they must constantly rebuild their social circles as people catch on to their behavior and cut them out of their lives. Story 29. Always trust those who mend their own mistakes but never those who blame others for theirs. Story 30. Being disrespectful to service workers, people experiencing homelessness, animals, or children. Story 31. Replies to everything with something negative and will not let anyone have a moment of peace because of their anger and grumpiness. Story 32. When someone lies all the time, even about small things, that is a big red flag. Story 33. A person who enjoys the pain, sorrow, or misfortune of a living being. Story 34. Liars. You will not have to lie if you do not do bad things to begin with. Story 35. They go out of their way to protect wealthy and famous people from being exposed in the Epstein files. Story 36. Someone who feels resentment toward another person simply because that person is better than them at something. Story 37. When an apology is not followed by corrective action, it becomes meaningless. Story 38. They are not happy about other people's accomplishments. It just sparks jealousy in them. Story 39. They make excuses for people they, deep down, know are horrible. Story 40. When your first name is Andrew and your new surname is Mountbatten Windsor. Story 41. They are always victims and have excuses for literally everything. Story 42. They only ever speak about themselves and think they are special. They will do anything to hurt you and have no empathy. Story 43. Judging someone solely by whom they voted for, without knowing anything else about them, is unfair. Such people are typically the most hateful I have encountered and are generally not good. Story 44. They truly believe that Fat Hitler is a great president. Story 45. Inherently, everyone is considered good by some and bad by others because of the complex system of conflicts of interest in which our lives are entangled. Key points. 1. Laughing when someone is hurt or humiliated. 2. Pretending to feel empathy rather than genuinely feeling it. These people are difficult to spot. 3. Manipulators who give hot and cold treatment depending on what they can gain from you. 4. People at work with an attitude of reaching goals by any means, which often violates moral principles. 5. Hurting animals or showing no compassion for them. 6. Being rude and disrespectful to people who work in the service sector. Story 46. When someone acts nicely only to get something, not because they care. Story 47. How they treat others they perceive as lower than themselves. For example, wait staff, housekeepers, and especially animals. Story 48. They treat customer service workers as if they are beneath them and mistreat animals. Story 49. When someone tells you how good a person they are, remember that genuinely good people do not announce it. They simply are. Story 50. Someone who is nice to you but rude to the waiter is not a nice person. Story 51. They are rude or nasty to customer service and service industry people all the time. I understand being upset, but the person you are taking it out on often had nothing to do with what happened to you. with other things that upset you that day, or with your short fuse that badly needs medication, therapy, and anger management. They are often children still in or just out of high school, or third-party employees who, even if it is their fault, did not intend to ruin your day or leave you devastated over something as inconsequential as a cup of coffee. Story 52. Celebrating because someone they did not agree with or like was killed. Story 53. People are not uniformly bad or good. This kind of black and white thinking gets us into trouble. Story 54. They start a Reddit post to identify clear signs of a bad person so they can better conceal them. Story 55. Everything is someone else's fault. They always portray themselves as victims. Story 56. The way they treat others, especially those in service jobs such as servers. Story 57. Behavior becomes worse behind closed doors when there is no one else to defend or provide evidence. This shows they know their actions are wrong. Story 58. Animals, especially my dogs and small children, sense those things. Story 59. When people can only trash talk others, it becomes harmful. I understand the need to vent sometimes, and that is okay in my opinion. However, it should not turn into a gossip fest, and you should also be able to speak positively about someone. Story 60. When everyone who left their life was a bad person and was to blame for everything. Story 61. They have no thoughts of their own. They just follow others or cannot describe their beliefs. Sneeko. Story 62. When they dismiss your problems because they have had it worse. When they judge you for your passions and make you feel bad about having them. When they treat you poorly, it is hard for you to hate them. This is not always their fault, but it can be a sign of manipulation. Story 63. According to their story, all of their exes were the problem. Story 64. They planted a turd outside my door. Turd me once, shame on you. Turd me twice, shame on me. Story 65. Pay attention to how they treat waitstaff and retail workers. If they are rude or treat service staff as if they were robots, you might be dealing with a bad person. Story 66. They put others down to lift themselves up, not realizing it does not work. Story 67. Hating the opposing political party without realizing they all manipulate people on both sides. They want us divided and fighting. Stop bickering and wake up. Story 68. They attempt to push their ideologies onto others and shame people who do not share those beliefs. Story 69. When people treat service staff, such as waiters, bartenders, hostesses, and others, like garbage, talk down to them, and leave poor tips. Story 70. They say immature, rude things. At an 11-year-old baseball game, an 80-year-old said, "I hope your team loses." I replied, "In 80 years, that's the maturity level you reached? I'm so sorry you are old and grumpy. You should have tried harder in life." Story 71. They create a new post like this instead of using the search function to view the hundreds of similar threads and thousands of answers. No, they would rather start a new post to farm karma. You original poster. Story 72. The supermarket shopping cart situation is frustrating. I have zero respect for anyone who leaves a cart in the parking lot. It takes seconds to return it to the cart corral. Story 73. Someone who compares problems, makes everything about themselves, repeatedly reminds others of what they have done, and tries to present a holier-than-thou image. Story 74. No accountability. Hates constructive criticism. Avoidance. Story 75. The idea of bad is relative. To me, a person is bad if they do not care whether they hurt others or cause someone to be killed to get what they want. Story 76. Gossiping about people close to them and being rude to service workers are behaviors I dislike. I've never met a good person who didn't like animals. Story 77. They are angry all the time. When they walk into a room, you can tell they are upset. Story 78. Small interactions are often revealing. Notice how someone speaks to waiters or service providers, whether they gossip or speak badly about people behind their backs. A casual negative remark about a stranger on the street can also be telling. How a person treats animals is another good indicator. If someone constantly complains about others and believes everyone else is always wrong or bad, that is a red flag. Story 79. They shit on everyone, steal, lie, and take advantage of the few people who haven't turned and walked away. They don't like animals and may hurt them. Animals typically don't like them either. Selfish, rude, and inconsiderate. I could go on, but you get the point. Story 80. They like to mistreat others but then turn around and play the victim when they are called out. Story 81. People carry a certain vibration with them. Think about the first moment you met someone. Did the atmosphere become positive or negative? Trust your gut feeling. Story 82. They never take accountability. Everything is someone else's fault, no matter how obvious their role is. Story 83. They do not have the humility to recognize their mistakes and change. Story 84. People who litter or do not return their grocery carts and say there is someone getting paid to do it are the same people who think being considerate is optional. Story 85. When someone lies, cheats, steals, talks behind others' backs, judges others, lacks empathy, gaslights, and consistently steps on others to get ahead in life. Story 86. When my dogs do not want people around, they become aggressive. They are normally passive around visitors at my house. Story 87. They voted for Donald Trump or own Trump propaganda items such as pins and hats. Story 88. Maybe this is more incel than bad, but when they refer to women as females it feels dehumanizing. Story 89. Maybe it's a bad idea to try to categorize people as good or bad. Story 90. Hates the poor, people of other races and religions, but still claims to be a Christian. Make America Great Again supporters. Story 91. Some people are either loved or hated. Those who love them often do not know them well, while those who hate them have gotten to know them. These individuals are manipulative. They try to gain affection to control others, and when they realize they cannot, they stop pretending and people begin to dislike them. Story 92. They will say they are a good, honest person and that people take advantage of them because of it. A truly good and honest person would never say that. Story 93. I voted for the candidate just to annoy that group of people. Story 94. A person is wearing a red baseball cap with white letters on the front. Story 95. The word bad is somewhat moralistic. Not right for me is my guide. So I look for two traits: whether the person is talking at you or to you, and whether the person is an energy vampire. How do I feel while I am in their presence? Story 96. They do not return their shopping cart to the designated zone. Story 97. If they have red eyes, furrowed eyebrows, a slouched posture, and hold their hands up slightly, that is usually a good sign. Alternatively, a strange mustache and a bald head may also be signs. Story 98. How people treat others who need help when they have nothing to gain reveals their character. A good person helps someone in need up. A bad person kicks them down and holds them there. Story 99. How they treat pets and animals, whether they respect them, harm them, or neglect them. Story 100. My stepson is a weird dude. He can look at an intense car crash and not even blink. Story 101. A clear sign is when someone consistently hurts others without remorse, showing a pattern rather than a one-off. Story 102. What would people do if they believed there was no threat of punishment or consequences, as in a purge-type situation? Story 103. My grandpa said this once about my younger sister. Honey, I think I saw your sister's true face. It was like a mask dropped. I saw something I had never seen before. No compassion, no regret, no empathy at all. Her eyes were empty. She was so mean and hateful. I hate to think she has been completely failed, but she has. Grandpa was not the sort of person to say something like that, so it was serious when he did. She had a horrible nature I cannot explain. It did not seem normal like the rest of us. She showed no regret, empathy, or compassion for others or for actions that may have hurt people. That is clearly a sign of a bad person. Story 104. Close your eyes in front of them. If you see darkness, they are a bad person. Story 105. The manner in which a person treats the weakest among us is the best indicator of whether someone is kind or cruel. Story 106. They never worry about whether they are a bad person. Story 107. If someone belittles you for any life decision you make that you feel good about or that was made in your best interest, do not let them. Story 108. Top knots. Every single guy I have met wearing one was a complete jerk. Story 109. If someone treats pet dogs or cats poorly, they are likely a bad person. Story 110. A person who manipulates other people's emotions to gain sympathy is also bad. Story 111. Marrying a Hindu woman and then demanding that she convert to Christianity afterward. Story 112. Knowingly neglecting animals under your care does not sound as awful as other cruelties, but when you know better and they cannot speak up for themselves, it is especially cruel. What is worse is that they were entrusted to your care with the expectation they would live long lives full of love and joy. To betray an animal that knows nothing but the world you have shown it, when all the animal needs is love and compassion, is a special kind of evil. People who hate cats do not understand that cats are some of the most loving creatures on the planet. They will love you if you show them affection and take care of them. That is unconditional love. Do not throw it away because you value your pets less than the rest of your family. Story 113. Not returning the shopping cart. Not saying thank you to service workers. Immediately placing orders without responding to greetings such as, "How are you?" Always reverting conversations back to themselves and continuing to yap without actually responding. Relationships founded on gossip. Constant negativity they project onto others. Not valuing basic communication. Ghosting or blocking without reason. Classic avoidant behavior. Lack of empathy and honesty. Inability to take accountability or admit wrongdoing. Inability to apologize. Story 114. They do things the person they are trying to help warned would make them feel like they have psychosis. Story 115. A person who can only see the worst in those weaker than themselves. Story 116. Wearing a Nazi costume in a bar. Allowing Nazis in your bar. Story 117. They show a lack of empathy, sympathy, and remorse and are superficial, prioritizing looks or money over others. Story 118. If someone only acts kind when there is something in it for them, they are not genuine. A genuinely good person treats others well even when no one is watching and there is nothing to gain. If a person's kindness always has strings attached, that is a clear red flag. Story 119. The key is the reveal. Otherwise, people may hide schadenfreude because they know it is socially improper. The reveal often occurs when the motive is petty, such as envy. They treat the incident as small enough to pass off as a joke if others disapprove rather than join in group validation. They may shout the word deserved because their reasons are trivial or misguided and would not seem valid to others. If they notice that no one else is celebrating, the silence can become unbearable, prompting them to express their delight. Story 120. He mistreats animals and does everything for his own convenience. He appears kind, but when you are careless he will undermine and destroy you. Yes, I have a coworker like that. Story 121. They are truly racist, purposefully denying reality and blaming people for unrelated things because of their skin color. Story 122. It's easy, but I'm always surprised by how many people can't see it. You can tell by their micro-expressions, mostly in the eyes. It's all there, yet most people just don't notice. Story 123. A bad sign does not mean much. It is just a gesture. You only need a little focus to identify signs easily, but do not forget that sometimes gems are hidden in dirt. Story 124. When they laugh at other people's pain like it's a joke. Story 125. They are always caught up in drama and never take accountability. Story 126. The person always has a lot of drama surrounding them, and they insist it is never their fault. Their lies become a tangled web. Story 127. There are always signs. People who are mean to children or animals, who constantly gossip, who have extreme road rage, who turn everything into a pissing contest, or who always play the victim. Story 128. Their bio is about being honest all the time or speaking their mind. They are self-centered assholes. Story 129. They start punching you in the face when you are on fire. Story 130. Out of character. I reviewed the current top 10 non-joke answers and checked how many signs of a bad person apply to the Republican Party. 1. Lack of empathy. Republicans have said that empathy is a sin. 2. They speak poorly about everyone to others. 3. They treat people differently based on what they can get from them. 4. They do not take accountability or admit when they are wrong. 5. Someone who always makes things about themselves, lies a lot, or hurts people without feeling bad is a big red flag. 6. I have never met a good person who is a pathological liar. Trump is the biggest pathological liar in the country. 7. Mistreating animals. Kristi Noem shot her dog in the head because she could not train it. 8. The way they treat waitstaff, extending this to how they treat people they consider socially beneath them. 9. You leave interactions feeling you have to investigate, defend, or repair yourself. Gaslighting and victim blaming are hallmarks of Republican behavior. 10. They treat those around them poorly and make decisions based on what is best for them in the moment. I could easily go on, but the point has been made. Story 131. They cannot admit fault and frequently lie in obvious ways to avoid accountability. This includes assigning blame to others and speaking ill of them. Story 132. They take the last granola bar but leave the empty box in the cabinet. You get excited, reach inside, and are devastated. Story 133. They brag about how good and empathetic they are and how they are always magically doing various things. Yet there is never anyone or any sign, and you have never seen anything that corroborates their boasts. When situations do come up, the things they talked about just do not exist and never happen. They warp and distort stories and insert themselves into events they were not part of. I had a former friend who would retell stories we told him and insert himself into them. We always had to remind him he was not there. It turned into arguments with him insisting he was, when he was literally in another state at the time. He also claimed to have done things that came from internet videos. After I had just seen an Instagram reel, he would tell me he and others did the exact same thing, even though he never left his house and did not live near anyone like that. I would just say I had seen the video. Their actions contradict all of their self-absorbed boasts and the nonsense that comes out of their mouth. For example, someone who is constantly pessimistic, hateful, and hypercritical, going on long, opinionated rants regardless of whether anyone asks. When the topic of hate comes up, they suddenly claim they have no hate in their heart and act completely unaware of why anyone would look at them sideways. Bonus points if everything they brag about never applies to you. For example, they claim, "I'm so good at not soiling people's porches. I'm the greatest at it." While they constantly soil your porch, fight you, and deny it whenever you ask them to stop. In general, someone who is so full of nonsense and so far up their own rear end that they cannot tell their own lies from reality and will not entertain the idea they are wrong. When an argument happens, you need at least one extra person with you to say, "Yes, you do these things," or "This never happened," because alone they will lie, manipulate, and gaslight, especially if they are quick with words and will say anything to win. Story 134. Everything they do is motivated by self-interest. Story 135. People may disagree, and that is fine. If you see someone who has no friends, be cautious in your interactions with them. Others may have already experienced how that person might treat you. Story 136. They steal from you, then get angry when you ask them to acknowledge it and apologize. Story 137. Makes nasty comments and is rude, but describes themselves as real and honest. Story 138. They make other people's pain and issues about themselves. Story 139. They seem on the surface very nice, but they insist that everyone else is the problem, or worse, they make you feel like you are always the one causing the problems. Story 140. When they are only kind when there is something in it for them. Story 141. You can tell when someone is bad by sensing their aura or emotions. When someone is annoying, it does not take much to notice. Story 142. Not being able to apologize or admit when they are wrong. Story 143. Secretly competing with everyone around them and allowing their deep-seated envy to turn them into monsters. Story 144. I had a boss who would spout religious platitudes on every conference call and any other opportunity. He was the most conniving, backhanded, lying snake I had ever worked for. He was a director and was asked to retire because he was taking kickbacks from vendors. Anyone who forms their personality by reciting scripture is an instant red flag for me. I say this as someone who does not really mind if you are religious. Story 145. When a person refuses to accept a friend's no and intentionally provokes or exploits the friend's vulnerabilities or weaknesses in response. Story 146. It's subjective, though. Even if your perception of someone is negative, that doesn't change that they are human. Maybe they experienced trauma or were driven by desire, but there are no truly bad people, only misunderstood ones. Apologies for my grammar and sentence structure. English is not my first language. Story 147. Anyone who says they find purpose in helping others is a red flag for me. In my experience, those people have been the worst. They do not want to help. They only want the satisfaction of saying they did something good. Story 148. A lack of basic empathy. An I do what I want attitude that regularly hurts others despite the consequences. Gaslighting friends, partners, and employees. Story 149. People who must convince themselves and others that they are good often mention the good things they have done to gain some kind of gratification. Story 150. They constantly talk badly about people behind their backs. Story 151. When they claim to be straightforward, they are actually outright rude. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.